All right, so we are all set up, finally running. Welcome to Rendering for Animation. So after today, we will be moving out of flat shaded gray and moving into the world of color and materials. So today's exercise, or exercises I should say, is rendering one set of files using RenderMan, and the other set using what is called Maya Hardware 2.0. It is basically real-time rendering, as good as Maya can do it. Not quite up to the level of Unreal or Unity, but decent for animation, much better than Playlab. So we've got a couple things. One is, you have a choice. You guys are going to be doing either your interior or exterior scene that you just got done lighting for your last assignment, Project 4. You're going to pick one of those. I've got an animated camera pre-done that you will import into your scene. You will use that in place of the standard stationary render cam that we give you. And then you'll set your scene up and render out the appropriate number of frames. So you have a choice, interior or exterior, separate cameras for both because they are separate scenes, separate file sizes, separate requirements. Then the batch rendering hardware for Maya Hardware, unfortunately we only have one set of files that works. Usually makes everybody happy when they can burn the bunny. But we actually had 3 files at one time, but as RenderMan progressed, they stopped working with RenderMan. This is the only one we could get to work. Because, as you guys will find out, RenderMan is pretty invasive. Like, you can say you want to use Maya Hardware, but then it bounces back to RenderMan. So, there's a couple of workflows. There are workarounds, really, to get around that kind of limitation. All right, so let's see today. Oh yeah, next week Discord hours will be Wednesdays and Fridays, 10 to 12, 2 to 4 in my office, and then I'll be 10 to 4 the whole time on Discord. Frank again will be running the Open Lab on Fridays from 1 to 5. Optional if you want to show up. All right, Project 5 will be due Monday night, just kind of a reminder for you guys. The reason I mention that is sometimes, depending on your render settings, it could take a while to render out those frames. What was the average render time that you guys got for either the interior or the exterior? Finished, done, production quality? 2 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. 5?
5.
3, 5.
Wait, I think 3 or 2.
3 or 2.
Actually, I had like a bunch of other stuff open, so.
Well, that doesn't help. 10?
I did get one that was 6 minutes, so.
Alright. So figure somewhere between 3 and 10 minutes, depending on your setting. Now, multiply that by 70 frames. So that will add up. You're looking at possibly between an hour or, if you go crazy with your render setting, 8 hours. I kid you not. So the whole idea is to be as efficient as possible. Remember, it's time versus quality. Now, another thing you're going to run into is we've got a different denoise parameter to set. Previously, it's been denoise, turn it on, use the default, it's called single frame. Now we're going to use what is called cross frame. Cross frame simply means that it will render the entire image before it starts denoising any of them. And by image, I mean image range, like all 70 frames. It will render them all and look at the frame it's on, compare it to the frame after and the frame before. And what it does is it tries to filter the denoise so you don't see kind of splotchy movement in your scene as the frames go by. So it's meant for animation. However, having said that, that does take a little bit longer to run. So you got to factor another 15, 20 minutes in on top of your render time to be safe.
Fun.
Absolutely. All right, so we've got a couple of PDFs, the interior, exterior PDFs. The bunny is a Google Doc, just because it's easier to make changes and propagate it to everything. We're going to be moving most of our stuff into Google Doc, just because I hate having 15 places to upload changes. I can just put a link in there. So the appropriate instructions are inside Project 4. Or Project 5, sorry. So this is what the animated camera looks like for the exterior scene. Whether you do day or night, it's still a truck in, they call it. You're just going from one camera position to the other in more or less a straight line. The final end frame is actually your final frame of the camera that you have for your still image. So everything should still work in there. So if you choose to do this one, you're going to take the exterior rendercam.ma file. That is camera only. Download that. Download the PDF workflow, because that includes not only Maya information, but also you will be taking your still frames into After Effects. So another thing to factor in is if you have not downloaded After Effects from the cloud, from Adobe Cloud, you will need to do that, because After Effects is required for pieces moving together. But you guys have the Creative Cloud, so it's free. All you have to do is download it. All right, and then there's a reference file for you, exterior and a reference movie. So you can compare yours, make sure it has no more noise, and it should look the same. So for the interior, this is kind of a little bit of an orbit around, very subtle orbit, again, about 70 frames. 70 frames is enough time just to get some movement in without going crazy. Now normally, if you were doing this, it would be a much slower move if you were doing this for a scene. Alright, so scene a 22.3. I don't know why I have that up there. They're all 22.3. Different camera to import a Maya scene file. That contains just camera for the interior. We've got a PDF for it and also reference for what the final movie looks like. All right, so the bunny burn, this is hardware. Ari, your lab instructor, used to work in visual effects. So she did the rabbit for us. It's baked in as a file, so it was a simulation, but now it is baked in just frames, and it allows us to do this in real time. So this is slightly different than the RenderMan scene file because it has Maya materials and Maya lights, because Maya's hardware renderer only handles Maya stuff. Cheap, quick. This render, start to finish, takes about 3 minutes. And that's like 120 frames. That's because it's real time. So, you have to download the project for this one. You're not going to be able to use the bunny that you lit and did all that work in for Project 3. Nope, because this is completely different. This has frames that have this simulation baked into it, that are part of the animation. So we have a Google Doc for this, and we have a reference movie so you can kind of see what it's like. This movie will also, or actually the render and the frames will also demonstrate whether you have your project set correctly. Because that back Cinder block wall will not be there if you don't have your project set. Remember, everything is contained in source images. All of the external files that you bring into Maya. Maya looks automatically in source images to pull any texture information in. And that wall is a texture. Right. So, let's see, which one should we demo first? Interior? How many for interior? How many for exterior? Yeah, interior wins. Everybody else is apathetic. They don't care.
It wasn't ready to vote.
Uh-oh.
I'm like,
Wait. So we're going to go with the interior first.
So when did you download the interior?
So what you're going to download is, if you choose to do the interior, you will download the appropriate PDF right here. There's your interior. Yep, it opens up in your browser, but just click the download button in the upper right corner. You can download. You will also need to download the camera, which is at the bottom of the deliverables section down here. So there's your interior camera. Your interior camera, what you want to do is take your project 4, make a copy of your entire project folder, rename it Project 5. That way you're not altering Project 4 at all. Because we're going to be going back to Project 4, the original one, copying that again and making that Project 6. But for now, you don't want to mess anything up in your original file. Because you spend all that time lighting, and you know Maya is very spiteful. Yeah.
So we're taking the original Project 4, the unaltered one that we downloaded for Project 4, copy.
No. The one that you lit.
Okay, so the one we finished.
Yeah, it's got to be your finished version because it's got to be lit. So you're taking your Project 4 that you submitted last night, make a copy of the whole project. Don't just give me a copy, or make yourself a copy of what you uploaded, because that does not contain all your necessary project subfolders. So basically, you want to do something like this. So Project 4 right here. Here's my Project 4 right there. Got my, let's see, 2019. Yep. So what I'm going to do is take this folder, copy it, and I'm going to pop it into Project 5, paste it, and this will now get changed to Project 5. I've got a separate folder for my Project 5. In here, I am going to change my Maya scene file as well. So we're going to do the interior. This is going to be Project 5. And we're probably going to be doing the exterior after this, so I'm going to change my exterior as well. Make that Project 5. Now I'm going to go into my downloads. I'm going to copy, actually I'm just going to drag over my interior render cam Maya file, put it into my scenes folder. Alright, does that make sense? This way you've still got Project 4. If anything goes south with Project 5, you're still covered. This is the one that you lit. Right, it may not seem like it makes sense, you know, we're just reusing the same files, yeah, but don't work on your originals. Once you get something submitted, lock that down, that's your gold version. What's that?
You still using that file that we submitted by the flag, right?
But you want the project folder structure from before, but the files that you turned in should be your final ones that you did.
Why is my doing that?
All right. So I'm going to download this PDF just so I don't have to have it open in my browser. And I can get an idea of what my workflow is. All right, so I'm going to start up Maya, set my project to project 5 that I just created. Okay, you're going to go to my downloads. That's where I've got my PDF. All right, set my project. File, set project. You want to find out where you saved it. Mine's right here. File open. Going to open up my scene file. So it's going to be interior. Project 5, interior lighting day. It's got the lighting. Just going to go look through the render cam, just do a quick IPR, make sure everything's there. It's always a good idea before you start working with batch rendering for multiple frames. Verify all your files are linked up. Verify you can see the image outside the window. Verify if you've got any other textures in there. Verify that stuff. All right, so that looks good. So far, so good. Let's go see what the magic PDF says to do. So next we want to import the interior anim render cam. You guys know how to import stuff, right? File, import options. Here are some very important things everybody needs to know. You might have use namespaces checked on. Uncheck use namespaces. If you forget to do that, what it will do is give you, when it imports the camera, it will give you the file name with a colon, and then whatever the camera is named inside the file itself. That colon will kill your render. Remember, special characters, spaces, even though Maya did it, it's still going to kill the render name render when you go to render it out.
Use flashing nodes?
So, yeah, turn off use namespaces, resolve with clashing nodes, and with the file name. Import options. File, import, options. Remember, anytime you want options for any menu command, where do you go? Go to the box. There's your options box. So once you get these options configured, import, find the file, and if you were clever, you stuck it into your scenes folder inside your project. Click on it and click import. So I'm going to open up my outliner, and there is my animated camera. It has no extra names. It's got the exact file name that's in the file itself. So int anim underscore render cam. If you forget about namespaces, it will put int anim underscore render cam colon int anim underscore render cam. Colon will kill you.
So all we do with the import option, sorry, is we shut off the user namespace.
Correct. Clashing nodes. We have to resolve with clashing nodes.
Where's that?
Right underneath the namespaces that you want checked.
Okay, resolve clashing.
Yep. And with file name. Those are the safest options. All right, so this means we now have a new camera added to our list. So I can go to panels, perspective, look through my animated render cam. And now, if I hit the play button, you should be able to see your scene move. It's going to move at the speed of light because we're not actually rendering or animating in real time. It's just playing frames. And I'm in wireframe, so it's fast. If you've done this, you've done your job. Go into the PDF. And you want to put the start time of your animation to 1 and the end time to 60. You also want to do the same thing for the playback range. Yes?
My timeline doesn't have those options underneath the sliders.
You don't have any timeline?
I have the timeline itself and the play, pause, and everything. I don't have anything that's underneath the timeline.
All right, so you may need to go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, to Preferences. Under Animation, let's see. It might be under Display. No, it's not Display.
It's under UI preferences.
Oh, UI, okay. Elements, right?
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, under UI Elements, under Categories, make sure you've got the range slider right underneath time slider. Thank you. And once you make a change to that, make sure you hit save. All right, so this is your start time. This is your range. This is your end time of the playback range. This is your end time of the animation. So start for range and animation are both at 1, and end for the range and animation are both at 60. All right, once you've got this, I would recommend you do a save as. Because now you've got it saved with your animated camera.
Do we we save over the file that we had in there previously?
I'm a big believer in not doing that. I just did a save as, and I added the word animation or anim at the end of it, so I know I've got Project 5 without animation in the camera and Project 5 with it. This way I don't have to go back to Project 4 framing.
Oh, I just put 001.
You can do whatever makes sense. That's perfectly fine. Yes?
My animation's playing extremely fast. Are we gonna fix that, or?
No. There's no reason to, because when we render it out and put it into After Effects, it will play at real time. Right now, it's probably just set to play as fast as it can through the frame range. You can change that in your render settings, but we're not really doing animation, so it's not necessary for us.
So you just need After Effects just to stitch all the photos together, correct?
That, and also to put a watermark on it, and to convert it into a movie.
Okay.
Without After Effects, you can't do any of it.
Yeah, my boss had me do that a couple of times. It was the first thing he had me do, actually.
Good.
Actually, well, not the watermark, but just stitching together everything.
All right. So now we're going to go and take a look at what we need to do for the Common tab. So in your render settings, so usually you go up to Render Man menu, Render Settings, and in the Common, we don't need to adjust color management. We want to have frame range. You want to change that from current render to animation. So right there, frame range, animation, start frame, end frame are 1 and 60, just like the timeline that you just did. By frame. Anybody know what that is?
How many frames it renders?
No. Because how many frames it renders is going to be right here. There's your start, there's your end.
I mean, like, does it go by like 5, or does it every 5 render, or does it actually every 1 render?
Ah, there it is. It renders every frame. If you're trying to do a stop motion effect, then you could render on what's called the tube. Every other frame. So then you would get kind of a little jumpy motion. Yeah. Put it in what?
Like for the animation to introduce action auto-change, or put it on step to, if you want it to be jumping.
You could, but generally, if you're doing stop motion, you are just basically taking a picture, right?
Right.
So if you're taking a picture, what you're going to do is use that one picture twice. So you probably could put it in step. But generally, this is going to be something that would be done in post-production, like with composite. So they're just going to take all the frames, put them in, and go, you know, put a filter in there so it only does every 2, every 4, every 8. Yeah, you definitely could do that, but you generally, from what I understand that they're teaching now, is you generally use that just for your keyboard. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you can. Question?
When I have my frame range, everything
In the common tab?
in the, yeah,
Because it's set for animation or single frame?
for like in the
Up here, under frame range. Render current frame or animation?
it doesn't have that option at all. There's nothing that lets me select in that
Click on render there. Then go back. Yes. Okay. You're copying your project, the whole project for structure. So when you just make flat, copy that. that's gonna be fine.
What?
You're taking the whole project and copy it. Paste and change the name, get rid of the word copy. Ribbon space, change the word file.
By the way,
Project file. You're basically duplicating your entire structure, so you can work on it separate from this.
so like this picture.
Alright, so we've got this done. Next, you want to take a look at your cameras. So we want to have a single renderable camera. For everybody listening to this as an archive or here live, if you forget to remove the perspective camera or the other render cams, you will come up with duplicate frames.
Yeah, I heard this.
Which means you will come up with the right number of frames here, but then it will go back and start rendering 60 frames of one frame out of this camera. So you have to make sure you've only got a single camera in there. How do you remove the unwanted camera?
The trash can.
Yeah, there you go. Trash can. Okay, image size. That should be set from the previous project. We're going to be doing, this is interior, it's going to be 720/405. That's set for you automatically. So now we go into RenderMan. So now we need to decide, okay, what kind of sampling do I need to do? That's going to be up to you. I would start with whatever you use to render Project 4 out with. As a starting point, yeah. Now, make sure you render a couple of frames in the image tool first. Just to make sure you got a feel for what it's going to be like when the camera changes. All right, AOVs. Under display, beauty, you're going to change the mode from single frame to cross frame. Cross frame is for animation. If you forget to do this, you may have splotches that travel across your screen based on the animation. Workspace. This one's going to be a little bit different than what we did previously. Workspace, you need a frame number in there. So previously, we would get rid of everything except scene.extension, correct?
Yes.
Today we need to have scene.frame number, which is F4. Now, if you guys have done this and you've already got this in your workspace, what you can do is insert your cursor, right-click, and go down to F4, which is 0 padded frame number. It stands for 4 digits for your frame number. And then put in another dot. Same thing with the RIB file format. Add camera dot frame number dot RIB. Again, that frame, that F4 or frame means you're going to have 0001, 0002. It's frame, it's called padding. We could have a single number, but the problem is once you go above single digits, it starts to overwrite it. It starts to renumber. Yeah.
When I right-click it, add the arrows before and after the F4s, that's what it is.
That is correct. That's code. That just says this is code for frame number. It's relative to whatever your frames are.
I just wanted to double check because I can't read any of the text that was listed.
Yeah. If you have go to training, it should show up a little better. So same thing with the RIB file format. You're going to want to have camera.f4.rib. Again, this information is inside the PDF right here. So for example, it's going to be with F4, it's going to be 0001. Frame 2 will be 0002. You could have less numbers, but 4 is kind of like a generic starting point. Now, the reason we need a dot in there is because when you bring it into After Effects or Premiere or any image editing or movie editing app, it will read your file name, see a dot, if it sees numbers, it'll go, oh, those are frames. They're all together, and it will bring them all in as a group. So, file name, dot, frame number, dot, extension. And in our case, the EXT gets replaced with the EXR. And again, the EXT is relative, it's just going, hey, I need the file format from your AOV menu. All right, does that make sense? So this is basic information for any animation that you're going to do. Understand what you're changing here. You can animate your stuff. You can do whatever you want with it. As long as you understand what you're doing here and what your output is going to do. Now, if you're doing your own animation, obviously your start and end range would be completely different. It's going to be based on whatever your needs are. You don't have to start at frame 1. You can start at frame 9 and go to frame 32 for a walk cycle. Depends on you, the animator, where your start and end are. That is your call. Right, so version number. What's that? Did I say it?
Yeah.
No?
I don't know why.
All right, so version 1. Start with version 1. If you render it out, something happens, you don't like it, the settings weren't that good, go to version 2. We'll make a separate folder, dump your animated stills in there. It's basically frame sequence. All right, so for me, since this is a demo, I want really fast results. I am going to do a horrific quality of just 8.
I mean, we can always just leave it rendering in the background. You have to do it now, right?
Well, I want to show you how you piece them together in After Effects.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to start it and stop it. So I want to go down to batch render. You're going to see a little jitter there in there. It's reading every frame. This is gathering information for the local queue to do batch rendering from.
Look at doing a bunch of them.
And there we go. So notice I have 118 files. That's because I've got one set of images that are not filtered and one set that are going to be filtered. Just like with the still image, you get 2 images. Yeah, well, it's going faster than that crappy quality. So this is purely just demo. I'm going to stop this and not utilize any frame. All right, so here's the thing. If you cancel your render in the middle, you will not get any finished frame because it must complete the entire thing before it will denoise. It's not going to denoise as it goes. So just be aware. Yep. All right, so I'm going to delete this job. There we go. All right, so here are my finished frames. Let me get rid of everything here. All right, so if you cancel your render in the middle, and you'll see a few frames, you know, OpenEXR, read options, we always set to as alpha, right? You get a bunch of noise, you get a bunch of stuff. These files are basically unreadable because it's waiting for the entire batch render to finish so it can embed all the denoise information. So, again, just because you see a few frames like this, they are not usable. Okay. So once you've got all your frames rendered out, you'll get two sets of images. You'll get filtered, which are the frames you want to bring into After Effects. So now, to bring your files when they're done into After Effects, launch After Effects. We should all have the same version because we're all using the Creative Cloud. Adobe updates it all the time. I highly advise you to not have Photoshop running and Maya and After Effects.
I'll just watch for this part.
All right, so what you'll see here is your starting point, and you want to create a new project. Create a new project. Name it appropriately. But I'm really not going to name it until I bring my footage in. So the next step is, after you create a new project, select New Composition from Footage, which is this icon on the right. That will give you an open dialog box. And what you want to do is navigate to where you've got your frames, your project folder. Your frames are going to show up where?
Images in your project.
Yep, images in your project folder. All right, so I've got some pre-done images here. All I have to do is select the first frame. Down here, it'll say, oh, I recognize that as OpenEXR. Import as footage should automatically be selected. In fact, you can't change it. And underneath here, it should say OpenEXR sequence. That means it realizes that that file name has other frames attached to it, and it will basically look for that file name, grab everything with that same file name, and bring all the sequenced render images in. So I just select one, click open, and basically here, this little icon of multiple files, that is my movie. All right. So something you guys may or may not see is the image outside the window. It is basically the same issue that Photoshop has if you bring in the OpenEXR without telling it that the alpha image is treated like an alpha. Mine, for whatever reason, has the image in it. If you do not have the image outside your window, you basically want to right-click on your frames. Again, it's the icon with multiple files. Go down to Interpret Footage and go to Main. What you want to do is click Alpha and click Ignore at the very top under Alpha. Ignore, click OK, and your outside window image should show up. Like I said, my files came in correctly because this was an older version of RenderMan I rendered from. That's an important step. You drive yourself crazy thinking something's wrong with the images when it's really just After Effects not knowing what to do with your alpha channel. Yes. Yep. So over here in your little composition project area, the multiple frame icon, right click, interpret footage, main. The alpha section at the very top, you want to turn to ignore, click OK, and then your image will show up outside the window.
Okay, so right click multiple frame, go to
Interpret footage, main. This is going to be in the video too. You can always rewatch it. So interpret footage, main. In the open window, it's going to show. You just select ignore for the alpha. Nice thing is, when you bring in footage in After Effects, you can play your frames immediately by hitting the space bar. Now, this is the point where you want to save your After Effects project. So I'm going to go File, Save. All right, so we brought our footage in. We've taken care of the alpha channel. Now what we want to do is add in the watermark in After Effects. So that part is actually pretty simple. After Effects is layer-based, just like Photoshop. So what we want to do is go back into After Effects, come down here in the timeline, go up to the Layer menu, New, and we want a new text layer. Again, this information is in the PDF. So now I've got a new layer. It's sitting on top of my layer with the frames in it. And I've got a little cursor in there. So this is where you can type in your last name, first name, and term ID.
You have to change the opacity to 50%.
Yep, change the opacity. So you can change the color of the font. Just simply select everything. Change the color. If you want to change the point size, nice thing about After Effects is you can just left click and drag and make it bigger or smaller. So that's horizontal. Nice thing is you can also stretch it vertically. Now, changing the opacity does not occur in all the text properties. Changing opacity occurs down here in the layer. So what you need to do is click on that little triangle next to your text layer, and that will expand all the different subsections under it. And since we want to transform, there's your opacity. So we want to put it down to 20%. So for After Effects, it's 20% because, I don't know why, but 20% here looks the same as 15% in Photoshop. So go figure, it's a dope. So 20% opacity. Once you're done with that, save your project again. And then it's time to export as a movie. All right, so I'm going to collapse my text layer. To export our footage, we select the composition, which is up here. Select the composition, go to File, Export, Add to Render Queue. And yes, we have to render it out of After Effects. That will change from the timeline at the bottom, which is still there, and bring up another tab called the Render Queue. So what we want to do is go and check a couple of settings. Under Output Module, click Lossless. Verify the format options are set for animation. Format should be QuickTime. Do we have any audio in our frames? No. So down here at the bottom, you can turn audio off. Now, theoretically, it is set for auto, so if it doesn't see any audio, it'll take it off. Yes?
Could you repeat the first couple of steps after you export it into the record queue?
Isn't that all there?
It's all here in the PDF. All the steps. So right now, we're going to export the footage. You're verifying animation. I'm turning audio off. Click OK. Now, under Output, we want to make sure you save it to the proper location. I'm going to save it back in with my frames. So it's going to be my interior anim. Int anim 1902, that's my file name. Yours will probably be different. And click Save. Now you're all set to render. And you hit the render button. Over here on the right side. And you are done. Wouldn't it be great if Maya was that fast? Yes.
If you accidentally close out your list, is there a way to bring it back up, or should I just restart the backtracker?
Oh, you closed your local queue? Is it still running down in your dock down here? It's not there?
I accidentally closed it like I pressed X, so I just restarted?
Yeah, you're going to have to, because yeah, you canceled it.
Okay, it's fine. It's not just X.
Okay. Ooh, Photoshop. Let's quit out of that. All right. So where did it go? Well, I put my movie in the same location as my frames, which is right here. So it's going to convert it. If you want to, you can set it to loop. That way it'll just go back to the beginning and start over. Animators watch their stuff in loop all the time to look for jumps. They can analyze the same motion over and over. So what you're looking for is noise crawling across the wall. Look for any noise on the floor. The floor should not really be that noisy. It's direct light from the sun or distant light, so it should clean up pretty quick. But the shadowy areas between the curtains and where the wall light is, that's going to be the noisy area above the light. You might see some crawl there. If you see noise there, go back. You'll need to up your samples. The batch rate. You have a choice. You're going to do either the day or night. You're just doing one software. So I'm going to go over the nighttime exterior just because it's the opposite time of day of this one. Because if you choose to do the exterior day or night, the frame size is different than this. It's not a wide HD aspect ratio. And we have to make changes in After Effects.
Oh, so we're only doing one or the other?
One or the other. And then you're doing the wrap. Yes. All your frames? Yeah. If it's 2 minutes of frame, then it's going to be 2 times 60, might be a couple hours. If it's done already, you might want to check your frames, but it's a little quick. It's not showing me what? You have to go up to panels and go to perspective and choose the new render form.
I have mine right.
And also in your render settings, you got to make sure that your renderable camera is set to the new camera.
I have mine right since you started rendering noise.
So what's your average time? You got like 5, 6 minutes of frame. It looks like 5.
Is that good or just 2 months?
How did your frame look when you finished it for project 4? That's how simple.
That's probably going to run the max frames of the home.
That's going to be your call. Because your job is to find out what's the quality I need for the job. Yes? You can start there. You may need to increase them a little bit because it does move. Yeah, you should be all right. As long as you have denoise cross frame on, it should be okay. Now, the only thing you might have to do is, if you've got your indirect samples at 1, increasing it to 2 might clean up the shadow noise in your area. Okay, so if you did that in your still, you should be fine for background. But unfortunately, you don't know until you see them and they all move. That's like why everybody's always nervous about that. Yeah. All right, so check your settings. You got the word copy with space. That's what the children ran. Also, when you're done with that, check through your tab to make sure nothing else. Don't forget, if you have spaces in any of your names, it will kill your render. If you duplicate a file, Maya always puts a space in the word copy. That will kill your render. Alright, so let me go over the workflow for the exterior. It's basically the same exact workflow. Alright, so we're going to do exterior night. I'm only going to show you this just because importing it into or into After Effects is going to be a little different. Yes? Yes, because it's going to give you one set of frames that are not filtered and one set that are filtered, just like with a still image. So the only, like I said, the downside is you got to wait for the whole thing to render before it goes back and starts denoising everything. Yeah. 118 is normal just because it's double your normal frame. All right. So I'm going to do a save as before I do anything else. Make sure you download again. Basically, you want to go and download the appropriate PDF file and the appropriate camera. Exterior Anim Render Cam. So let's move this out of the way. So there's my exterior camera. Same procedure, file, import options. Make sure use namespaces is unchecked. Resolve with clashing nodes with the file name. Import. Choose exterior anim. You can open up the outliner and verify you don't have a weird name in your camera with a colon or anything. If you do, you can delete the name there. So now I can look through my exterior render cam and hit play. You want to go and set up your frame range exactly like you did for the interior. Which, if you're doing this, you haven't done the interior, so this is all new to you. So, start and end are going to be 1 and 60. So down here, 1, 1, end animation, end range. There we go. So again, that's going to show up under panels. You've got a separate animation camera. Yeah.
So if I'm doing the batch render, can I close the Maya file and work on other stuff?
Good question. All right. Once you get the local queue up and you are successfully batch rendering, you actually do not need Maya running in the background because it is a separate app. It downloads all the information from Maya that it needs. That's why it goes through and does a little jump on the screen, looking at every frame. Loads all that information, self-contained. You can actually quit out of Maya. That will free up some resources, and your render might speed up a little bit. Whatever you do, don't try to stream a movie or go into Photoshop and start working on stuff because you're going to steal resources from it. Just let it go. Make sure your computer does not go to sleep, because if the screen darkens, a lot of them by default are set to go to sleep. If it goes to sleep, it's going to pause your render and not start up again until you wake it up, which can kill your time, basically. Another thing, plug your computer in. If you're running off a battery, it's going to take a lot longer to render out those frames than it is if you're running power. Yeah.
All of my settings are right, but my render's still going really fast.
Why don't you let him finish and see what you get? How long is it taking per frame?
It's not even taking a minute.
Now, not all frames are going to render the same.
Yeah.
If you hit a range where it doesn't detect a lot of movement, it may blow through there. You may just be in a spot where there's not a whole lot going on. But I mean, I hate to say throw them out. If you're satisfied with the still image quality that you got, and you're still using the same settings, put it in After Effects, see what it looks like. Let that be your guide. Yes.
So when I try to batch render my scene, it's the same thing that happened with Saul. It's just like under a minute it's done, and the batch and the renders aren't like showing up anywhere.
That usually means you've got a space in your file maybe somewhere. So go back to Maya. All right. So up here across the top, do that. So across the top. You want to look to make sure you don't have any special characters.
There's one finished in 6 minutes, and I did the math.
No spaces.
6 hours. I beat it, so I was like, yeah. So I went down to 256. So you're right.
I can check on this. Make sure there's not an accidental spaces in the end. And that's dead.
What is it? Prevent the computer from sleeping on the mattress?
Yes.
Too low? Okay.
Yes.
I'll lock it up and just go to sleep.
All right. So you're going to set your project up the same way to render that you did. Or the same one I just demoed for the interior. So render settings, common tab, you want to go to animation. Your start and end time should reflect exactly what you have in your timeline. Make sure you remove the incorrect render cam. You should only have one renderable camera. And it's always a good idea to save your Maya scene file. Go into RenderMan, set up your sampling, set up your AOVs, denoise, cross frame, workspace. You want to have scene dot frame number dot extension. Now again, if you've got it deleted from project 4, all you have to do is insert your cursor, right click, then you'll get your frame code in there. And again, camera.frame.rib. Start at version 1, save your scene file, and batch render. Now, when your frames are done, it's going to be pretty much the same workflow that we did with the interior, with a couple of changes. So let me start up After Effects, and the changes are basically the image format. The image size is different. This is more of a square aspect ratio, and After Effects thinks that you're bringing in old school digital video. It's going to squeeze your pixels from being 1 pixel by 1 pixel to 0.9. So everything's going to look squeezed. Just because of the aspect ratio. All right, so new project. Same thing. New composition from footage. Find your footage. I've got mine over here. All right. Don't save. Had to quit out of After Effects because I accidentally hit a button I didn't want to. Oh dear. All right, there we go. All right, there's all my frames, all nice and happy. Get rid of all my old files. There we go. All right, so let me start up After Effects one more time. Create a new project, new composition from footage, find your frames. All right, new project, new composition from footage, find your frames, click on the first one, verify the format, verify its footage, verify it's a sequence, click open. There we go. All right, so I'm going to hit save. This way I can save it. All right, now, it's going to be kind of hard to see for those of you just looking at the projector, but my frames were imported 720 by 486 with an aspect ratio of 0.91, which means my pixels are not square, they are squeezed. So this is due to the aspect ratio of the files that were brought in. So we need to change not only the composition, but also the footage. It's reinterpreting both. Telling After Effects it's wrong. Usually feels kind of good, but eh. All right, so here's what you do. We go to the composition. Composition selected, composition settings. Down here in the middle under pixel aspect ratio, we change it from digital video to square pixels. Right above it. Click OK. Notice now our composition is big enough. That's kind of like the canvas area in Photoshop.
Right, change it from 1 square pixels.
You change it from basically dB to square pixels. It's the top option. Now we want to do the same thing to our footage. So for the footage, we select the icon underneath the composition here. We right click, interpret footage, main. This time it's down at the bottom, pixel aspect ratio. We change it from D1 DV to square pixels. Now everybody's happy. In your little icon at the top of the project, it now says 720 by 486, 1.0. Everybody's happy. Unicorns, rainbows, confetti, birthday cakes. All right, now, next thing we do, set this to go and put your watermark on and set it to render. Yes? Two different places. One, you select, in the left side here, under project, you select the composition, and you go up to the composition menu, the composition settings, you change it there. The other one, you click on the footage underneath that icon that's got multiple images on it. You right click, interpret footage, main, and down at the bottom you change the aspect ratio there for the footage too. It's only because the composition was made from the footage that everything has to get changed. I really wish you'd be able to tell when you import it, hey, this is square pixels, stop squeezing my pixels, which sounds awful, but don't bust my pixels, basically. All right, so same thing we did before. I'm going to go down to the timeline, click on my layer, go up to the layer menu. We want a new text layer. And this is where you put in your watermark. Again, same tools. You've got the horizontal aspect ratio. You got the vertical, you can change the color, make it yellow. Down here in the timeline, expand your text layer. Go to transform, and there's your opacity, 20%. You can also just type the number in too. Also. All right, so once you get all that done, then you are going to go and set it to batch render. Or actually, it's just sending it to the render queue. So we're going to go File, Export, Add to Render Queue, check your output module, verify the format options or animation, QuickTime format, turn off audio, click OK. Check your output location. Rename it if necessary, which probably will be. Click Save, and then click the render button down here in the render queue. So once you've done that, you should be able to find your render movie, open it up, set it to loop, and play. Check for noise. The nighttime, it's going to take a little bit longer, maybe. Yeah, because you've got a lot more shadow in there. All right, so those are basically the two software renders. Remember, you're only doing one software render. I left the rabbit till the end because that one is the most perplexing. All right, so let me get situated here, brace myself. All right, so there's my rabbit. There's my project. All right, now, a couple things about the rabbit. The rabbit is in an MB file format. You cannot convert it to another file format because of the embedded cache files for the simulation. Maya is going to batch render it sort of similarly to the way RenderMan did. It's going to be a lot faster. It's going to drop it into source images, into images, and just give you a folder called TMP10. It's kind of like a really dumb, down and dirty, quick render. Right, so for the rabbits, here are your instructions. So basically what normally happens is you download the rabbit project, uncompress the folder, and you basically just set your project and jump right in. All right, so I'm going to set my project, open up the rabbit, click open, and continue. You'll get an error. Don't worry about it. Just click OK. Give it a second or two. There we go. So you can play the animation. It should play for you. It may kind of chug a little bit because it is real time. All right, and normally what you would do is, let's look at the instructions. I'm going to ignore this top part. Normally, once you bring it in, go in, set up your timeline, 1 in 70, 1 in 70. You're set to go. You need to set up for batch rendering. Now, when you are doing the rabbit, you don't want to go into the RenderMan menu. You want to click on this icon right here to display your render settings. Now, notice that it says RenderMan, and I change it to hardware. What does it do? Goes back to RenderMan. Why? Because RenderMan's evil. RenderMan is very jealous. It doesn't want you to give attention to any other renderer. So here is the workaround for it, which I have for you inside my Google Doc here. Basically, before you open the rabbit, I'm going to go to a blank scene file. You want to go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, to Preferences. On the left side under Categories, go to Rendering. Change your preferred renderer to Maya Hardware 2.0. Click Save. Quit out of Maya. Why? Because if you don't do it, it's not going to clear any cache that's in Maya. So basically, launch Maya, open a blank scene in your Windows menu, Settings, Preferences, Categories, Rendering, Preferred Renderer, Maya Hardware 2.0, Save. Exit Preferences, quit out of Maya. Relaunch Maya. Relaunch Maya and stay away from the Maya menu. Pretend it is toxic. All right, going to wait for everything to start up. I'm going to go set my project. File, set project. Going to find the bunny. Project VP2. Click Set. File open. Bunny. There we go. Continue. Ignore the mental ray node error. I've even got that here. Check your start and end time in your frame range and timeline again. This time I'm going to do a save as just so I can have a copy. It says it could not save it. That's because I tried to save as an ASCII. So save it as a binary file. Like I said, it's got embedded cache in there for the simulation, and it gets picky. All right, so that part's good. Now what I want to do is open up my render settings, which is this button right here. And now Maya Hardware 2.0 is there. Do not click in there and accidentally go back to RenderMan, or else you have to go back and do everything all over again. So, down here under File Output, this is where you want to name your file. So this is going to be Bunny Burn 1902. The file format, we are going to be doing PNGs because they're quick and they're decent quality. PNG, frame, animation, extension, you want to change it from single frame to frame.number.extension. This, you do not have the workspace that you had with RenderMan, so everything is in the Common tab for Maya. Yes?
It still says I'm using RenderMan after I.
That's because you must have gotten the render settings from the RenderMan menu. You can't do that. So you have to go do everything again. You basically have to quit out because now Maya thinks you want to use RenderMan all the time. So, name.number.extension, frame padding, you can go with 2 or 3, I prefer 3. Frame range, just like you did with the interior or the exterior, 1 in 70. Renderable camera, make sure you set it to render cam. This will be HD 540. Now, in the RenderMan Hardware 2.0, light limit's going to be 8. All these settings should be the same here under performance. The only other thing you have to worry about is screen space ambient occlusion, which is basically down here. You want to enable it. So we get what looks like contact shadows for the rabbit underneath the body. If you don't have anything under samples, just leave it blank. That's fine. Go down under anti-aliasing and turn on multi-sample anti-aliasing enable. If you have an option for sample count here also, choose the maximum. If you don't, leave it blank. Click close, save your scene. And now we are going to go to the render view. You have to do this inside Maya's render view, which is the eyeball icon up here with the clapper. Not to be confused with the RenderMan one on the shelf. This button right here. This brings up old school Maya render view. Verify in the center, you're set for Maya Hardware 2.0. You want to go to the render menu. Render sequence is at the bottom with the options box. The only thing you need to change here is the camera. For some reason, it will not read it in the Common tab. You got to make sure you use the render cam in this render sequence dialog. Once you've done that, at the bottom left, you click render sequence and close. Basically, what it will do is go through all your frames behind this big giant blue screen and render them out. So it takes about 2 or 3 minutes to render all the frames, which is why everybody likes it. So when I stop getting flashy numbers at the bottom here, tell me what frame it's on. It's on frame 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. It's got 70 frames, so I'm almost halfway done. This one I don't mind waiting for because it doesn't take that long to do. Okay, frame 42, 43. Okay, 10 more frames to go. Nice thing is, you should be able to see the frames as they pop in to the images folder in the TMP folder, the temp folder. Yay, 69, 70. Done. Right, going to close this. Save, minimize, and let's go into the bunny burn images temp. There we go, TMP. So I can just kind of go through my frames, just take a look at them. All right, so they're there. Next, we're going to be bringing it into After Effects. After Effects, it's going to be pretty much the same workflow that I demoed in the other two. You're going to start After Effects. After I quit out of here. Start After Effects. Navigate to where your PNG files are, and After Effects will recognize, again, frame.number.extension. It will recognize footage. All right, so let's go here. There's the bunny. No, stop that, stop that, stop that. No. Cancel. Bad. Go away. Watch what you double click on. Because you double click on something like I just did, and it will try to read everything in the folder and everything in subfolders and try to make a project out of everything. All right, footage. Let's just navigate. In here, images, temp. There we go. Select the first image. Format PNG, footage, sequence, click open. It should bring it in relatively quickly. There we go. It's in there. I'm going to make mine fit. There we go. Right. Go down to your layer. Make a new text layer. Don't forget your watermark opacity is down in your layers here on the bottom left. Go to your text layer, transform, opacity is going to be 20%. Then you're going to go File, Export. Make sure you choose your composition before you try to export. Export to render queue, output module, verify its animation, QuickTime, turn your audio off. Output to, make sure you select the proper folder that you want to save this in. And then render. When you're done rendering, check your movie out. Put it on loop and you can enjoy all that flamey goodness of the rabbit. Ah, bunny s'mores. Nice and melty. All right, so like I said, the rabbit may be a little perplexing trying to get the magic formula to get RenderMan to stop trying to impose itself as your renderer, but you can get it. All right, questions before I let you guys go for lunch, or let's go for break. Come back at 11:30.